Hello, and thank you for attending the second of three sessions that Aero Payments is hosting for the PCI DSS workshop this year for the Treasury Institute. We wish we could be there in person to see the smiling faces, spend time, have some drinks and dinner like we normally would, but unfortunately we're all dealing with this situation. So we hope you are staying healthy and that everything's going all right with your school. For this session, we will be sharing feedback, details, experiences with RFPs for merchant services and PCI compliance. And with us, we have some perspectives, basically video from clients that we've worked with in terms of their thoughts on what's important when it comes to merchant services PCI compliance. And Katie Todd, who used to be with Columbia University. We look forward to sharing some thoughts with you, and hopefully it's helpful. At the same time, if you do have questions during the presentation, feel free to use the chat to send any thoughts, questions you may have. You can send them publicly or even privately directly to me, and we'll get those answered as best as possible. So you don't have to be, posting your questions or thoughts in front of everyone else. If you don't want to, again, just send me a private chat note. You can also reach out to us after the session. We're happy to schedule complimentary consultation or share any thoughts or experiences we have that might be specific to your situation. If you're not familiar with our business, we've been around since 2005. We are qualified integrator and reseller of payment systems, merchant services, but we don't use any of our own technology. So we're here to help our clients figure out what solutions are going to be best for them. We've been working with universities primarily since 2015 when we first connected with Northwestern University. And we've been helping our clients figure out which systems are going to be best for them, setting up those systems, supporting them, helping with PCI compliance, and managing everything related to merchant services and supporting departments across a number of different universities. We are also a WBE certified woman-owned business founded by Deborah Jackson, who is our CEO.
So my name is Katie Todd. For those of you that do not already know me, I have been in the payments industry for maybe about just almost 10 years now, a little under 10 years. And the majority of that was spent at a large university managing all of the PCI compliance and merchant services for the entire university and the medical center that they had there. After I left the university, I joined Aero Payments, and it is a completely amazing experience. I had always wanted to help other universities, all of our entire community, we all kind of share information and everything. So it's always kind of been a passion to try to help other schools and individuals help solve their problems. And working at just a single university, I was kind of tied down to just staying busy with them, managing all of their issues. But after joining Aero Payments, it's allowed me to follow my passion in helping other universities and schools and individuals just like myself that are completely stressed out trying to manage all the craziness that PCI entails. And it's really been a great experience just being able to fulfill that passion and helping others, as well as continuing to help the university that I was originally at.
I'm Kevin Mooney, Assistant Director of Cash Management at Cornell University. So I've been in the Treasurer's Office for about 5.5 years, and that whole time has been spent doing many things. Among them is PCI compliance, or really harvesting all of the PCI compliance information from our merchants. I've also been the liaison, if you will, between our merchants and the credit card processors. So when it comes to acquiring the right solutions, whether it be in person or e-commerce or mail order, phone order, they would usually come to me in the office, and then I would go out to our processors to see what they have available that would best meet their needs.
So when managing university RFPs for merchant services and PCI compliance, there are a number of challenges and requirements to consider in terms of the language that should be used. Universities are like little cities, so every department has their own unique solutions, software, business processes that they must manage. Each department, whether it's athletics or fundraising, parking, admissions, tuition, dining halls, all need different software systems and merchant services or solutions that are integrated with those systems. On top of that, you're managing PCI compliance across all of these different solutions. And so the ultimate question is, how do you stay proactive versus reactive to what the departments need?
For years, Treasury, because of all of the requirements we had in terms of completing bid applications and ordering devices and helping research transactions, there was a bottleneck on our side, and we admit that. And there were times where we were not providing the a level of service that we thought was exemplary, and that's our bar.
The technology continues to evolve. PCI compliance continues to change. There will be PCI 4.0 coming out soon, and you must consider how all of these details will impact whatever merchant services that you select. And you must also consider whether or not you want to be exclusive with a single provider, or if you want to be more flexible so that as technologies advance or as departments need different systems, they have the ability to take advantage of different merchant services or solutions that may exist down the road. We've seen many schools try to combine their merchant services with banking RFPs, and all of that can get muddled together because is the bank that's providing your depository and investment services really going to be the best option for your merchant services? Is getting the best price really the primary goal for the university, or is functionality and security and efficiency more important long-term for the operational soft costs that the departments and treasury and IT teams are going to have to go through versus just looking at the hard costs of what's the lowest number I can get for my processing? And
from our vantage point, if we were even to consider combining banking services with credit card merchant services, that now we're talking about a significant amount of resources and a significantly larger project. So by limiting it to credit card activity, now we're able to really focus on what we needed, what was really important to us at the time, and that was really the credit card services and PCI compliance piece.
That once you do have your merchant services set up, who's going to order the merchant accounts, who's going to manage the devices, what are the costs of all the ancillary details in addition to just the actual processing fees, what are going to be the lead times, how long are my departments going to have to wait for devices for support, how are you going to include PCI compliance within these merchant services? Are you going to require point-to-point encryption to help reduce the other costs and services that you're going to have to manage on campus, like segmenting networks and penetration testing and other PCI compliance requirements that will come with whatever merchant services you set up? Again, it's not just about price, because you have all of these other ancillary requirements that come with whatever merchant services you select. Is your vendor going to have experience working with universities? Are they going to have the expertise to provide support? It is always difficult to find, payments and PCI compliance experience. It's hard to hire those folks on staff. It's hard to keep them on staff. So where are you going to find the support necessary, the training, the ability to, get your departments up and running? What's going to be your responsibility versus the vendors? What are your departments going to have to do? Making sure that, again, that's all secure, it's compliant, who's responsible for what? Is the university going to be responsible for making sure that all your networks are compliant and secure and segmented, or are you going to require that the vendors provide, point-to-point encryption, again, as an example? And then what SAQs are you going to be responsible for? How much effort is your IT team and your department's going to have to put forth for completing compliance? How many different campuses do you have? How many different entities? Is there a hospital involved, as an example, with your university? And then you're also going to need to know which payment gateways are going to integrate with those merchant services, which devices. How are you going to reconcile all these different systems? Are they going to integrate back with your ERP system, your accounting? So a lot of details to think through as you start to plan for an RFP.
Based on our experience, we were finding that we were limited really as far as the devices we could offer. Our resources were very tight here in Treasury, so we couldn't really dedicate a whole lot to researching new solutions. And so when we were in that situation, we realized that it was time to reach out and find a partner that could help us, with with that and really help us find the best possible solution out there for each and every one of our merchants on campus.
Credit card processing is extremely complicated. So you have everything from how your customers are coming to campus, connecting with your merchants, which devices are you using, again, what payment gateways, acquirers, card brands, issuers. Every one of these steps along this chain is happening every time you run a credit card, and it's happening within milliseconds. So who are the vendors who are going to help you make sure that this transaction flow is going to stay efficient and maximize these opportunities for you? From Aero Payments perspective, we have worked again with a number of universities and have brought our expertise in sharing best practices and helping our clients set up these systems and manage them. For Aero Payments, we are always, looking at ways where we can help, evaluate systems, determine what the needs are of the different departments, creating strategic plans, managing the vendors that are providing these services, helping to ensure that departments are processing payments efficiently. All of that revenue is flowing back into university, bank accounts and ERP systems and being reconciled appropriately, and then making sure that PCI compliance is as streamlined as possible and providing ongoing support to those departments. So when they need new merchant accounts, new devices, we can be the go-between for the departments and the different vendors that are providing these solutions on campus. We do not use any of our own technologies. Aero Payments help our clients select, implement, and manage whatever systems are going to be best for their school in terms of all the different gateway providers, P2PE providers, terminal providers, hardware providers, and processors.
The one challenge, especially for a large university like Cornell, is that we know it is not feasible to have a one-size-fits-all approach. So that's really always going to be, I wouldn't necessarily call it a pain point per se, but I would call it a reality. And that the fact is we have a veterinary hospital, we have a full-service hotel, we have a law school, we have continuing adult education. So there's a lot of different initiatives that are taking place on campus, and not one solution is going to meet all of those, all of those different departments.
So when you're doing an RFP, what are some of the PCI compliance considerations that you're going to need to think about? If today your school is completing an SAQD, you're going through 329 detailed questions with network diagrams, penetration testing, vulnerability scans. You probably have a number of full-time people who are dedicated to managing the complexity of your PCI compliance on campus. And so when you're segmenting networks, locking down computers, going through all these details, it can be a very expensive, costly, time-consuming process on an annual basis versus reducing your compliance scope and leveraging other solutions like point-to-point encryption. So if you're going out to RFP, it's a great time to consider what is your current PCI compliance scope and how can that be improved, reduced, and again, streamlined so that you're not spending as much time and money on staff members for completing PCI compliance and protecting networks on an annual basis. The PCI Council obviously recommends point-to-point encryption so that you can reduce that PCI compliance scope. So if you do have credit cards that need to be entered into computers or devices that need to scan credit cards, that they are using point-to-point encryption to remove that credit card data from your network. We see that most universities don't have point-to-point encryption across campus, and so they're dealing with the complexity of credit card data flowing through their networks and back out to the acquirers, as well as their ERP systems, and creating these different points of reconciliation across the board for all the different systems that are being used on campus. If you're going to RFP, you may want to consider how point-to-point encryption is going to work with the systems that you select. So if your payment processor is Elevon versus Chase versus TSYS versus Bank of America Merchant Services, or any of the other number of processors that are out there, what solutions for point-to-point encryption are you going to be able to leverage? Do those solutions offer the ability for you to use EMV chip cards as an example. Can you use Apple Pay, Google Wallet? These are all things that students want to use and ways for you to protect yourself against chargebacks. But if your RFP requirements or selected vendor doesn't provide the capabilities of using these solutions, then you will not be able to take advantage of the cost savings from an operational standpoint. At the same time, if you have to use multiple P2PE vendors, you have separate reconciliation across all those different systems, depending on how the merchant accounts flow back into the university and connect with your ERP system and reconcile. There are also ways to consolidate all of your processing and still be able to leverage multiple P2PE hardware vendors, so that if you need different solutions for point-to-point encryption to integrate with different software for each department, you can tie all that back together so that all the merchant accounts flow back into one place and integrate those dashboards for optimal reporting with your ERP system and reduce the amount of reconciliation that your departments are having to conduct on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. The point-to-point encryption solutions that we see primarily are Bluefin, Card Connect, Freedom Pay, Trust Commerce when it comes to hospital and healthcare situations, and then WinCave is definitely making a push, starting primarily in parking areas, but now moving outside of that and into other areas as well.
We have done actually 2 RFPs over the past 6 years. So in each one was a little different. So the first one we did back in 2014, we were looking at that time for point-to-point encryption merchants, and there wasn't very many of them back then. But we knew that it would greatly reduce our PCI scope, so that was the focus of our first RFP. There were a lot of P2PE providers out there, so we were really confident that we could find a P2P vendor at that point. So now we were looking to layer on merchant services on top of that, and we knew that that was going to be a real line of demarcation, if you will, between a lot of the potential respondents to our RFP. So having done that, we really focused this most recent RFP on finding somebody that can actually work with us out in the field and handle a lot of the questions that were otherwise coming to us.
So one of the ultimate questions is whether or not you want to require point-to-point encryption within your RFP. Even if you don't name a specific vendor or type of a vendor, you may want to require that whatever merchant processor is responding or processors are responding, that they do have the capabilities to integrate with point-to-point encryption and potentially include details around which P2PE solutions their merchant accounts are capable of being used with. So, and here's some thoughts from our clients and staff about whether or not point-to-point encryption should be a priority.
Ideally, we would be P2PE wherever it's possible. We would not just allow a non-P2PE validated solution unless.
So once you've decided about point-to-point encryption, one of the other considerations then is, what is your strategy overall? So moving forward, is your goal to reduce PCI compliance? Is it to get great costs? Is it to take the load off of the university at all in terms of supporting the departments? And so these are some of the things that we think about when we're working with our clients and that we've seen as priorities for some of the universities who we've seen upgrade their payment systems. So simplify and serve. So ultimately, can you consolidate and integrate as many of the systems as possible so that your departments don't have to log in and out of, let's say, CyberSource for online transactions and maybe Micros for in-person or POS transactions, and maybe a merchant services provider in order to access a virtual terminal, and somewhere else like Client Line to access statements and chargebacks? Can you make their lives more efficient by considering the overall details that are involved with processing in order to improve the overall experience, financial transparency, and operations across all of the constituents on your campus? from a success standpoint, you need to think about how you can proactively implement and support solutions that are going to work in as many places as possible. Continue to improve the infrastructure, not try to cut costs as much as you want to look at focusing on efficiency gains and opportunities to generate more revenue or receive more funds with less cost overall from an operational standpoint when you are deploying new technologies. And then on top of that, again, training and support is always going to be a big important factor, as well as reducing the amount of human data entry and potential human errors that may result from whatever systems you're using. Here's some concerns and resolutions. So again, trying to consolidate systems as much as possible. Looking at transaction reporting. So can your departments access reports online? Can they create custom reports? Can they export those reports into Excel? Can you integrate the reporting with your ERP systems? What does reconciliation ultimately look like today, and what improvements can you make with whatever new systems you're going to use? Who's going to set up those merchant accounts? Who's going to deal with the terminals, ordering the terminals? Are your departments going to need to process on computers? If so, are there virtual terminals options again? Do they need to be able to integrate with online solutions? If so, which ones? What gateways are going to be available? Is it CyberSource? Is it authorized.net? Is it some other API integration? What are the requirements of the different software systems on campus, and how hard is it going to be to overhaul those connections? And then above and beyond that, which departments are going to need to store credit card data securely, tokenize it, set up recurring billing, and, think about your foundation and fundraising departments. And then what software are all of these different systems going to integrate with so that your departments can take advantage of the new systems you're setting up?
Not everything is compatible with everything else. So that you really need to have, you really need to build your roadmap first before you go out to, before you send the RFP out to potential respondents. You really need to think about, what records management systems do you use? Do you want them to integrate with your payment processing solutions? Are there any policies currently on campus that the IT department may have that would prohibit certain solutions? And do you need to work with them to break that or to get them to change their mind or perhaps consider alternative solutions? So there's a lot of things to think about when it comes to sending that RFP out. And you really have to have a plan in mind as far as how you intend to implement PCI compliance, or what that looks like to you before you go sending that out.
Excellent. This is sort of an outline in terms of project plans that we've been involved with. So, thinking through not just which solutions am I going to switch to, how much is it going to cost, but who's going to do this work, who's going to manage the projects, who's going to switch out all the merchant accounts, bring in the new hardware, organize and train all the different departments, prioritize who gets to go first, as well as making sure that everything is handled appropriately and on time and within budget. So we've helped schools, switch out their merchant accounts and upgrade to full point-to-point encryption in 6 months to a year across the large campuses. And in other cases, we've helped schools deploy even faster than that for just specific solutions that they may need to address priorities that they may have at their school. Again, other considerations, whether or not you want to have exclusivity or flexibility with your merchant providers. So if you pick one acquirer, is that acquirer going to work with all systems on campus? Are you going to need to make exceptions? How hard is it going to be to go back to get those exceptions later on as technologies advance or as departments need to use new systems? If you have third parties on campus, are they going to use your merchant accounts, or are they going to use their own? And how is that going to play within whatever RFPs that you're putting together? And then how are you thinking about the overall reputation of the university and how the new providers are going to address supporting the departments, again, making sure that you don't have any threats or issues that are changing the way processing is happening on campus, what other schools have used these processors and what was their experience. In the end, you want to make sure that you're reducing costs overall, not just for your processing amounts, but for the device costs, gateway costs, reconciliation costs, setup costs, processing costs, PCI compliance. Again, everything across the board that can ultimately help move the needle forward for your university. So should you go exclusive or should you remain flexible? We've had a number of schools that we've worked with who have been in both situations, and there are definitely some disadvantages to being exclusive, but here's some thoughts from the people that we've worked with.
There are just so many different reasons why to not get into an exclusive contract. But yeah, I think just, ever-changing needs is probably the top reason why not to, because everyone knows every area is unique and has their own unique needs, and there's not necessarily one size fits all solution across the board. So, it started out originally, we were wanting, one processor was better at e-commerce solutions, and then another was better at, card present solutions, and then along came P2P. So
I don't think exclusivity would be to our benefit, to be honest with you, because again, it would really limit our flexibility on campus, because we understand that it's highly unlikely that any one acquirer and any one processor is going to have all the solutions that meet the needs of all of our departments on campus. So we strongly prefer non-exclusivity in our agreements. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we want our volume to be split equally among all these different acquirers, but if we can get a majority of our income going through one acquirer, so at least we have some consolidation and some efficiencies there, then if we need to bring in other acquirers to meet specific industry needs, then by having non-exclusivity, we have the flexibility to do that.
At the university that I was working at previously, we were maintaining, I think, 5 different processors, and when I started, there were 2 main processors, which was somewhat, fairly simple to handle and maintain. But over time, different needs arose, integrated systems, preference, just, banking relationships, all sorts of things came into play. And, there was originally Elevon and Global Payments, fairly simple, again, to maintain. We had a good relationship with them. Then, a department came along, and their vendor that they wanted to contract with, they did an RFP for their third-party vendor internally, and came to us at the last minute, of course, and we looked at the contract, and they could only work with a specific processor, one that we were not currently working with. So we had to go through the process of getting them on board. So that was one department working with a new processor there. So just, a couple of merchant accounts for that one processor. Then a similar situation came along with the medical center, and they wanted to leverage our Chase relationship, and they had already had one Chase merchant account for the lockbox processing. And so they wanted to open up all of their merchant accounts with Chase. So that became another processor that we added to the list. And then we also have another processor with one merchant account. We're working with Braintree. Again, similar situation, just the vendor itself didn't work with any of our processors that we were currently allowing at the university. So the only one really was Braintree. So we had to open a contract and go through the whole process with getting them on board. So again, there are so many unique needs at the university, which is why third-party service provider, like vendor management and vetting and due diligence is so key also. And just having the Treasury Department or whomever is maintaining your PCI or processor relationships to be involved at the very beginning, so that you don't get to the end of you're ready to start accepting payments and realize that there's not a university approved solution already in place there, because it really bottlenecks everything. So I would highly recommend that.
Then you have to consider supporting departments. So who's going to be responsible for what? Today, do you have a team either in cash management or treasury operations or IT who is the main contact if your departments need new merchant accounts or devices, or do those departments have to go directly to the providers? If they're going directly to the providers, are they calling in through, customer support lines, 800 numbers, and having to sit on the phone and wait a long time in order to get someone who can help them? Do those support people have a good understanding of what's happening at your university? Do they know the systems? Does it take a long time to get help? New devices, new merchant accounts set up? Or is it going to be primarily focused on your team to be the go-between and facilitate all these different details? And then what support will you have with your PCI compliance and your SAQs? Will it be up to the departments to fill this out? Is it up to the university? Do you have a QSA? Will these new systems create any more complexities with those relationships? Or is this something that, IT or Treasury is going to have to manage? And is it going to get easier or is it going to get harder with your new RFPs? For your RFP, are you going to have them include support within their pricing? Is it going to be an additional cost? Are you going to have to pay hourly fees? Is it going to be an extra cost? Are your departments going to have access to, email, phone, online support? Is that 24/7? Are holidays included? What if your foundation is going to have a big event on the weekend? Can they get support, or are they going to have to wait until Monday if things aren't working? What other training and consulting and PCI help would be included? What do the reporting systems look like? How are you going to receive your statements? Is it going to be paper? Is it going to be, Excel spreadsheets? You're going to have access online. How are you going to be notified of chargebacks? Is it going to be via mail, via email? Is that all going to one place, or is there going to be visibility across the board? Is the customer support team going to be US based, or are they going to be offshore? What are the business hours for that availability? What are the, response times? And then obviously it's not just about setting up new systems, but you're going to need ongoing support. So, are you going to need to update department communications in terms of what's approved and available for pre-approved solutions from the university? How is training going to happen? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be in person? Are there going to be demos or videos? Or are departments going to have to figure it out themselves in terms of how to use new devices? How does the processor acquire want to receive their SAQs? Do they have a PCI portal that's included with the merchant services, or is that going to be an extra cost for you? Are you going to have to fill out, paper SAQs? You're going to have to go through your QSA to handle PCI compliance. Will there be one place to see all the SAQs across all departments, or is this something you're going to have to figure out on your own? What about vulnerability scanning for those areas that need to have quarterly scanning? Is that included with your new merchant services? Is that going to be something you need to coordinate separately or get through your QSA? What are those costs going to be? Are they going to, impact the overall cost of your processing and your PCI compliance? So just from our experience, the main reasons that universities are looking to include support either with their vendors or be able to get additional support outside of their own team is to reduce the costs, the resources, and the budgets that are necessary for IT and for Treasury to manage. The departments obviously need people who understand the systems and need people who understand PCI compliance. So should you include support requirements within your RFP, or are you simply, again, just looking for the cheapest merchant services you possibly can get and gonna bear the brunt of supporting the departments?
And when you're the only person working on all of those merchant related needs, no one else around you and the university really understands what that entails necessarily. So I personally was desperate to get outside help in to help out with everything there. It was exhausting, again, just as a single person trying to manage the entire merchant relationship, that's working with vendors, all of the merchants, and they had about over 300 merchant accounts. So managing all of that combined with the medical center was again quite exhausting. After joining the team with Arrow, and being able to continue to provide that support to the university has just been it's just been so much smoother, just having a team of knowledgeable people that are experts in PCI and payment systems, and work with all the vendors across the board. And so it's it's so nice to have a team of experts to support the Columbia team there. So rather than just one person, they now have a whole team of experts, and it just makes everyone's life easier. Quicker response time to the merchants' issues now that they have a whole team responding, and it's so much easier to manage. I think that the merchants there at the university would agree.
By going outside, now we're able to immediately acquire a significant level of knowledge that we can apply right away and help our merchants tomorrow with a lot of great solutions and a lot of good advice and really terrific guidance as far as completing the SAQ on an annual basis, and pretty much any other question that our merchants may have can be answered right away. Whether it's answering an email or going through a phone call, or actually walking through step by step how to pull the right report that they need, or even how to set up a hosted payment page that really helps consolidate all of their e-commerce activity. It's been nothing but great news and great word of mouth that's going out around campus. And so what that would mean for us would be less room for innovation, less room to take on other projects. I think we would not be as flexible as we are right now. So that would be something that anyone would have to prepare for if they're looking to resume handling all of this activity in-house. They would really have to plan on dedicating a lot of resources to that effort, resources that otherwise would have gone to perhaps taking on a new project or looking at more ways to provide value to the university.
Thank you. Let's talk about some of the benefits that you can achieve through new merchant services and through RFPs that you should be thinking about at the beginning, so that you can include obviously the best solutions possible moving forward. So we've seen schools be able to improve their efficiency with new PCI compliance solutions, new merchant services, new point-to-point encryption options, and ultimately be able to consolidate and improve their overall processing costs. So it's not just about the merchant services, but also everything else in between. From a cost saving standpoint, if you have, let's say, 100 merchant accounts on campus, and you can save your departments an hour a day, either in processing and reconciliation, at $38 an hour, you're looking at $900,000 a year in salary efficiency savings. That's time that people can spend doing other things. It's less hiring for the future. It's opportunities to continue to focus on the things that are most important for your school rather than wasting time processing and reconciling your accounts. It also is an opportunity to reduce your manual entry mistakes if you can connect systems and integrate things. By reducing your PCI compliance scope, you can potentially reduce the requirements for network segmentation, pen testing, PCI compliance scope, filling out SAQDs and protecting those networks. That can be as much as $250,000 a year if you're looking at a couple of staff salaries or the cost of penetration testing, segmenting and setting up separate networks, managing those networks, and then obviously your PCI portal and scanning vendors for quarterly scanning can also be quite expensive from what we've seen other schools spending across all of those requirements for PCI compliance. And then we've also seen schools increase their revenue or increase the amount of funds coming into the university, either through foundations who are able to accept more payments in more places and more time, anything that might be out there to improve your school's ability to receive their funds quickly, receive more funds, and keep those funds within the university.
We helped a lot of merchants clear some roadblocks and we didn't know because they had never reached out, but they were struggling with, perhaps they had a particular website that had a very clunky payment processing system. So they had to do a lot of reconciliation on the back end, and maybe they just thought that that's just how it was. But
from an ROI perspective, we've seen schools literally be able to save $1 million a year in setting up new merchant services systems and overhauling their PCI compliance requirements. So again, everything from what those requirements are to efficiencies of processing and ultimately protecting the university, which is priceless. So if your school is preparing for an RFP, we've looked at a number of them. University of Minnesota actually put out an RFP for banking services about a year ago now. And we actually looked at responding to that RFP. But when we looked at it, the requirements were extremely detailed because it was combining both banking services and merchant services into the same RFP. Some of the pros for that one were that they did provide very detailed requirements for PCI compliance and how that ties back into the merchant services. They also did not include exclusivity, or if you wanted exclusivity, you'd have to explain why it was important or what advantages would exist. But again, they, in their RFP, wanted 3 years of audited financials, S&P ratings and Moody's ratings, which you're not going to find from, more of a nimble, smaller firm that is, not listed as a public company or on the stock market and doesn't have some of those details. The RFP language was complicated, and their RFP response portal required you to log in and actually answer each question individually for hundreds of questions in order to respond to the RFP. Hopefully they were able to get the solutions or services that they wanted, but we did not respond. At the same time, Cornell University, again, about a year ago, put out an RFP, again, very detailed merchant services and PCI compliance language. They did require point-to-point encryption. It was not an exclusive contract. They included a lot of requirements for supporting departments and setting up the systems. It also was a long and complicated RFP from a language standpoint, but they covered all their bases, and we thought they did a really nice job. So if you're looking for some sample RFPs or PCI language, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to provide some guidance or share documents we've seen from other schools, as well as set up complimentary consultations. So whether it's a phone meeting or a Zoom meeting, where we can talk to you about your directions, your goals, challenges you're working on, and share our experiences working with other schools. Thank you again for taking the time to attend our session here today. If you have any questions, feel free to offer them up in the chat box. I will be available to answer those questions. And if you want to reach out to us directly, we're always happy to schedule meetings again and share our experience. If you're going to put any questions in the chat box, you can either send them to me privately or you can put them on the public notice there. Either way, we'll answer them and keep your identity confidential if you don't want everyone else to see the questions that you have. So just trying to encourage more dialogue and collaboration. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and look forward to talking with you soon.